Welcome to Escaping Purgatory, a podcast where we rewatch Supernatural, then talk it through in hope that we can finally escape this show.
Join us each week, leave comments on upcoming episodes, and together we can escape Supernatural Purgatory. I said it real weird that time, but that's fine.
You're just excited because we have a special guest.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So our guest today is Danny, who is I Have Doubts on Tumblr, and we were very lucky that Danny reached out to us and asked to be on an episode, so it took a while to sort it out, but we got there eventually. So, hi Danny.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about why Supernatural for you.
That's a very good question, isn't it? For all of us.
Yeah.
Why are any of us here? Anyway, I watched Supernatural back in the day. I watched it as it was airing, as the Carver era was airing, and over time I kind of fell out of love with it a bit, and around the beginning of season 12 I just stopped watching altogether because I just got tired. And then November 5th happened. I was made very aware of things, and then over the next month or so my Tumblr feed kept showing me Supernatural for the first time in a long time, and showing me all these cool scenes and people gushing about it, and I was like, wait, hold on, is Supernatural actually good? did I quit when I should have just stuck it out? And then I eventually started going back and watching the show. I think I started with season 13, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Well, because of the widower arc with Dean grieving Cass, and I was like, oh, well, this is the gayest crap I've ever seen, and that's very good. That's personally for me what I like, and now I've just become obsessed, and most of what I think about is Supernatural, and I got my sister back into the show. And now I'm here.
And we're glad to have you because you can join us in this derangement. I mean, I think this episode is airing maybe it's almost a year or exactly a year since we started this, right, Annabelle?
I think so.
Yeah, which is wild. We've been thinking about it for that long now. We're very happy to have you on this episode. Thank you. I love that you are finding it Supernatural a crazy an experience as we are at the moment.
It's great. I've gone back and rewatched a lot of stuff, and I enjoy the show a lot more now, even episodes that I didn't used to like, or seasons that I kind of thought were trash. I don't think I'm even that picky anymore. I really enjoy all of it.
I think there's a lot to be said for a rewatch. I mean, we watched Sin City last week, and there are some scenes in that would only work, actually, rewatching it, I feel. So, I mean, this episode we're here to talk about 305, which is Bedtime Stories.
So it was Catherine Humphreys. Obviously, Kripke is the writer on this. The director was Mike Rull. We've had a Catherine Humphreys episode before. I don't remember what it was though, to be fair.
I think Born Under a Bad Sign was one of them. It's interesting with the director, Mike Roll. He also did On the Head of a Pin and My Buddy Valentine and Monster at the End of This Book. So a couple of big hitters.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Those episodes are, I'm just thinking of, On the Head of a Pin is when we get to that, I have many thoughts, many feelings on that episode.
Good luck cutting that one, that recording down to a manageable time.
Right. Every cast episode is going to be 6 hours long, just listen to your whole work day. I think you're right, because thinking of those episodes, he maybe brings in the emotional undertones to this, because this is quite a silly episode. But
I thought it was a very sad episode.
Yeah, for a Supernatural episode, it was. I mean, I can kind of see what they were trying to do maybe with it, the sort of acceptance side of it. Man, I was like, oh, it wasn't really there was no happy ending to this episode.
But I think that's the point, right?
Is that it wasn't a fairy tale ending. Or at least not in the Disney sense. Maybe the traditional Grimm's fairy tale sense.
Yeah, this is it. It's this episode is a story with maybe like a moral at the end for them to learn.
I guess we can get into that kind of stuff as we talk through the episode.
Absolutely. We kind of see when we start this episode, there's like a once upon a time housing estate, which, okay, like right on the nose immediately. And the music's all very tinkly.
Just as a little side note, I did find out what that instrument was called because I was like, I know there's a certain name because John Williams uses it all the time, and it's called a celesta.
A celesta? I think my keyboard has a setting.
And it's all twink, and it's the best way to describe it is if you think about the Harry Potter theme tune, that's the sound it makes.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Thanks for looking that up. Yeah.
You're welcome.
This place is in Maple Springs, New York. We see 3 guys, and they're complaining about some crappy wood they had. Like, it's the most bent wood I've ever seen ever.
It's super warped.
How are they ever going to make a house out of that? They're being stalked. Like, the camera kind of shows that they're being watched by something. They do make a little comment that says, like, one gust of wind and this whole place is going to blow over, which...
It's very silly.
It's pretty good. Basically, they all eventually get attacked. Like, one of the guys sort of like, he walks off and gets dragged behind some lumber. The other guy sort of gets eaten, I guess, like by the plants. And then we see this third guy sort of like cowering behind another stack of lumber.
No. The first guy gets killed next to pipes.
Oh.
The second guy gets killed next to wood. Third guy is hiding behind cinder blocks, like bricks.
I did not pick up on that.
Again, Supernatural were having their issue of it being so dark that you couldn't really tell what was around in that area, because I also didn't pick up on the fact that it was those materials that they were all kind of beside.
But I did think, because I watched it, like, why aren't they making that power than they were apparently?
Metal piping as straw is a bit of a stretch.
That's true.
Especially since that's maybe the sturdiest material out of the 3, if it's metal piping. So they should have had it be a really windy night.
Yes.
Like, as the, like, for the wolf huffing and puffing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That would have been better.
Really funny.
Yeah. We need to make a note of all of these ideas of when we redo Supernatural and do it right.
That just, like, gave me a shot of, like, fear, adrenaline.
I felt that, like, there was a thing going around on Twitter that was like, the CW was like, we'd be happy to do a 16th season of Supernatural. And, like, I'm a big fan of the show. Like, you should be happy to see that kind of news. And I was just like, no! I don't want it.
We don't trust you with it, CW. No, you don't. You don't get to have it. It's no.
So Danny's completely right. The first 2 guys, there's quite a good blood splatter. Actually, I appreciated that. And then the third guy kind of screams. It has a good scream to camera kind of moment.
This sounds weird, and I'm sorry, but I do appreciate a good male scream sometimes, and this was definitely a good male scream. That's not how I meant it, but like in this show, they had like, it's always the women who scream like really loudly and like pure B-movie. So when a man does it, I'm just like,
I want that on a t-shirt. I appreciate a good male scream. You're absolutely right, though, that it's nice when it's not the woman.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just going to be on my tombstone. Yeah. She appreciated a good male scream. All right, moving on. So we see like some cricket, or we hear some crickets, and a bullfrog is like just on the highway. I have to say, of all frogs and toads, I feel like a bullfrog is kind of cool looking. I feel like you just want to squish it and it would just go.
It's a really big, fat frog, which is nice.
We know something's up because I feel like the Impala is being driven kind of recklessly in the short frame that we see of it. Mm-hmm. It seems to be going a little bit too fast for, being at night and possible toads on the road, or frogs on the road.
Yep.
And we find out why. We see Sam and Dean, and they are arguing, like mid-argument. You don't know what triggered this.
We got the cult now.
Sam?
We can summon the Crossroads demon.
We're not
pull the
summoning
governor
anything.
and force her to let
We
you
don't
out
even
of
know
the
if
deal.
that'll work.
Well, then we'll just shoot her. If she dies, the deal goes away.
We don't know if that'll work either, Sam. All you're pitching me right now is a bunch of ifs and maybes, and that's not good enough, because if we screw with this deal, you die.
And if we don't screw with it, you die.
Sam, enough. I'm not gonna have this conversation.
Why? Because you said so?
Yes, because I said so.
Well, you're not Dad.
Dean is channeling his inner John in this argument, for sure. He is, though, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's just like,
he is.
No, you're not going to do it because I said so. I'm the older brother. You have to listen to me. And Sam even points this out. He does say, you know, you're not John.
I thought it was a little bit. I mean, it's good drama, but I also had a moment where I was like, wow, you guys are immature, because they were saying things like, you're not Dad, and well, I'm the oldest, so just because I said so. I'm like, how old are you guys? Like, I don't know. I feel like you should have left, like, those kind of conversations behind in, like, high school.
All I heard when Sam was saying, like, you're not John, is like, you're not my mom.
I'm the oldest, so what I say wins. It's like, come on.
I don't feel like they ever grow out of that, though.
Oh, no.
Well, do they? Because, like, how could you? You're with your brother the whole time. It's gonna come up, like, every single day, surely.
Sam's really tall, so all Dean has over him is age.
This is true. I feel like for this point in time, it's weird to see them being, like, not okay with a maybe, because you know that later on, maybes is literally good enough.
Yeah.
like if it might work, we're absolutely going to go do this.
I do feel with this whole episode, actually, basically the cult came back last episode, and then they kind of were anticipating, almost like fans being like, well, you could just go shoot the demon now. So they wrote this. That's what it felt like to me through all of this. It's like, well, that's the obvious solution to this problem. And like normally in TV shows, they don't take the obvious solution, I feel. So I felt that's what they were doing. Like, well, at least addressing it here, that they could just, go shoot this demon, problem solved.
I've pointed out, maybe not necessarily complained, but pointed out the amount of times that they get interrupted in an argument with a phone call. Like this part kind of shows you why they always do that, because the way that it just ends, like literally nothing else happens. It's like Danny said, it was the immature ending of like, well, I'm the oldest, and then that was it.
And then Sam just sort of sits there fuming.
Dean's just like, okay, well, tell me about this psychotic killer. Let's further the plot.
Sam's such like an immature kid there. It's just like, well, I guess I'll tell you.
But like, how do you move on from that? Like, how?
Well, it was an awkward transition.
I can't help thinking whenever this stuff happens, like, they're interrupted with the phone call or stuff. Like, I think on a rewatch of like how much influence Chuck has on these interruptions or like furthering the plot. There's a point in this episode that I want to bring up later for this as well, actually. Maybe I won't bring it up now. So the case that they're doing this week, there was a psychotic killer in the newspaper that Sam has. Basically, someone's been going around. Well, it's describing the attack on the 3 guys at the construction site. Because it's a full moon, they think that it's a werewolf. They turn up at the hospital in the town as they're from the sheriff's department. They introduce themselves as Plant and Page. So obviously Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin and Jimmy Page. They want to go and talk to the 3rd guy because he didn't die. He's awake and talking to people and answering questions. And they turn up to his bedside. So this guy, whose name is Kyle, thinks that they brought with them a sketch artist. Because I guess he was promised by the police. He got a clear look at this guy, so they're going to send a sketch artist.
You are the sketch artist, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That is exactly who my partner is. The things he can do with a pen.
Which, okay, when this was happening, I was like, okay, that's kind of fair, because we've seen Sam sketch before, like in, I think it was season 1, when he was having his visions, he was drawing a tree. Yeah. I know that trees are very different to people, and it's probably a little bit easier to sketch a tree than a person. I feel like it's somewhat implied that Sam has some sort of artistic ability, which is not the case. Kyle starts sort of describing who attacked him. They try to lead him in like, what did his teeth look like? It's like, I guess normal teeth.
They described this guy, 6 foot tall, dark hair, blue eyes, and I just wrote, Misha? Why is he in this episode? The thing is, Sam didn't have to try and draw this guy. Like, he gave him a description. He could have just written in his notepad.
I thought the same thing.
When the guy asked to see it, he could have been like, oh, well, I got to go back to the station and, like, write it up.
1 minute passes. How good of a sketch, like, how detailed of a sketch was he going to do in 1 minute on a tiny little notepad? It should have been better than what he had there, but, like, it didn't have to be anything impressive.
I honestly, truly believe that Sam thought he could do it.
At what point in that little, like, dinky drawing do you think he realized that he couldn't?
I think it was the hair. Like those little squiggly lines. He was like, no, I've gone too deep.
I like how all of the limbs and the body and everything just look like sausage limbs.
Yes.
Just look like sausages.
And as you sort of ending this interview, Kyle's doctor comes over. His name's Dr. Garrison. And he's just, doing his usual patient bedside stuff. And then that's when Kyle's like, well, can I see it?
Well, and then Sam shows him the drawing, and Kyle's like, oh, it's good. Like, he lies. He's like, yes, it's good. He's a patient in a hospital that just survived an attack, and his 2 brothers are dead. He's just lying to protect this giant's feelings.
He's the best kind of dude. He's still looking out for people even after he's hurt.
Oh, that's sweet. Stop.
They leave the hospital.
Boy, this is a piece of art, really.
Yeah, like he could have done it better.
We find out here that a whole bunch of other organs from their bodies were damaged, but the heart was still there. So it clearly wasn't a werewolf. Sam's response of, that's gross, is 100% true. I do think it's funny that, well, I guess because it wasn't on screen, Sam wasn't the one who had to touch the dead body.
That's true. I don't feel like they went down. I don't think they went down. I think that Dean just talked to the doctor. I think he got out of that one.
Now that they know that, obviously, because there's a lot of demons around, but like everything is now a demon attack, no matter what it is.
Yeah, it's their first go-to, like, because it's not a werewolf, or maybe it's a demon. This is interesting, but like at the same time, they did just release like thousands upon thousands of demons. So, like, statistically, it probably is.
Why would a demon stop halfway through an attack?
I think that, could have... Yeah, I got nothing.
Me neither.
And, like, they don't often admit they don't know what's going on, I feel.
This has a lot of comedic elements to it. Sometimes when they have these moments, it's kind of almost in, like, despair a little bit.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that word. But this episode, like, when they don't know stuff, is sort of played for laughs, which I appreciate.
It is funny, because this is a real sad episode, right? But, like we were saying, but there are a lot of jokey moments. But I think you need that sometimes, actually. It can't all be despair. Right, so we cut to the woods. There is a couple walking along. They are lost. They're kind of complaining that they ran out of food. Magically, they rock up at this, like, old house and then don't immediately question it.
An old lady, like, comes out of the house and, like, tells them, like, you guys are really, really far from anywhere else. And it's like, well, then what are you doing out here? Like, how do you get to, like, the grocery store for food? Well, we know what your food is, I guess. Like, how did this woman get out here?
This is a really good point, actually, because they're thinking about the episode. It's not like, the monster of the week is, like, manifesting anything. Like, it's not...
I know.
Yeah, it's not making anything new. It's using what's already there. So this old lady did live in the woods.
Yeah. Well, it's like the monster is manipulating people, but it's not like magic conjuring. That house is there.
We also know that cars can get there because later on, the Impala's outside.
I'm so confused by this.
So this is where I'm thinking, like, maybe the old lady was lying to them, that they weren't actually as far as they thought they were.
Yeah.
That makes sense, actually.
They were lost, but not necessarily that deep in the woods.
Yeah. Because the whole reason why they go into the house is because, one, he's hungry. 2, like, they needed energy if they're going to go first. Because it's so far away, I say in quotation marks, they need the energy to then get back.
That old lady's, like, living my life's dream. Like, I would love to be a weird old lady in the woods. Like, that's just my, like, goal in life, so...
Just bake random, like, cherry pies and just hope that strangers come by.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds perfect, actually.
So what you're telling me is that you're trying to lay a trap out for Dean.
It hasn't worked yet.
like every Dean girl before you.
Exactly. I'm going to leave a pie on my windowsill. Maybe Dean Winchester will visit me tonight. Maybe we should make that a tradition in the Supernatural fandom, like on Dean's birthday. Leave a pie on the windowsill, guys, just in case.
I like where this is going.
Yes, the old lady, she invites them in and they accept, although the woman is kind of like, no.
The guy is like eyeing up this pie, like really creepily. He's like very lusting after this pie.
You know, as we're going through this, I'm like, oh, you know what? This reminds me so much of Hunter Hurricane.
Yeah.
Do you think they like went back and was like, oh, that episode kind of worked. Should we do something like that again?
327 episodes, Annabelle. Of course they did. I would like someone on Tumblr to do the legwork for me and make a pie meta post about like all the meanings of pie and Supernatural, because I feel they are deep and many, but I can't quite put my finger on like what it is.
Or in. Sorry. I am in a spicy mood today.
You are. Look, just because I feel like there are very many, I'm being back to serious, I feel like there are many emotional beats that are related to pie in the series, and this maybe isn't necessarily one of them, but I feel like they definitely exist, and someone needs to please write out that meta for me, otherwise I'm going to end up doing it, and I don't want to waste like 8 hours of my life.
It's usually Mary. I think that's what the pie usually means. It's like harkening back to the good old days with Mary, where she supposedly baked pies for Dean, but actually bought them from the store. Yeah. But it's like it's the lie. It's the lie of Supernatural. The pie is a lie. It's home and it's safety and it's someone taking care of you, but it's not. It's someone went to the store and grabbed something for you, which is not taking care of someone, but it's still kind of,
yeah. It sort of takes out the. You know, there's an idea of, you know, when you hand make something, it's made more with love, essentially. And again, that's not necessarily true. You can still lovingly buy pie.
It's the fact that it was the lie of it, though, like that she pretended that it was her pie. I think that's true. Actually the important bit. Mm-hmm. Like if she just said, "This is the pie from the store," it would have been fond memories of his mother getting him pie. But instead, it was this fake thing.
You're right, it's kind of I'm going to go write this post. Pie is basically a metaphor for like the whole of the narrative in Supernatural, and that you think it's one thing, but it was actually another.
The whole thing is the apple pie life that they want, they can't have, but the pie is a lie. Like the apple pie life doesn't exist, which is interesting and to think about in terms of the show finale. But
I was thinking it too. I'm always thinking that, like, oh, what does Dean getting pied in the face mean? But let's not go into that. I mean,
that is another episode on another day when we are emotionally ready.
Oh, you will never be emotionally ready.
I know.
I listened to enough of this show to know that.
So getting back into the episode, we're inside and Ken has eaten. So it's Ken and Julie, the two people.
Oh, okay.
The old lady's like, oh, do you want some more? Because, you know, by the looks of it, he's probably had like 3 or 4 slices, which is quite a lot. You know, and he refuses because he's full. Julie suggests that, you know, now it's time to go. Like, we've had enough food, thank you. But as Ken gets up, he falls to the ground and like is clutching his stomach in pain. Julie also stands up. She also has some stomach pain, but clearly not as bad. And she's like, you drugged her. The old woman, like, nonchalantly just stands up, goes to her drying rack and picks up this knife. And then she just, you know, wanders over to Ken. Like, we don't really see any of this, but so I'm just thinking about like directing that old lady to, we want you to pretend to slit his throat and then stab him multiple times. Oh. Like, she seems like such a sweet old lady, and for her to just like, and we want you to be smiling happily while you do this.
Yeah, I bet that actor absolutely loved that. Like, yes, I've only ever had to play like the sweet old lady on TV shows. Now I get to like murder somebody.
As this is happening, we pan to the window and we see this young girl, and she's got jet black hair with like a red bow through it, and she's super pale, and she's in this white dress, and she's just casually watching.
So back at the hospital, Sam and Dean are kind of avoiding the cops that are already there because B-plot is still ongoing. And also they're trying to talk to people pretending to be police, so, you know. And they go and find Julie's room. The same doctor greets them as well, and they ask him what's going on. They kind of interview her and ask how she got away. Turns out she didn't eat as much of the pie, and she managed to push the old lady and hit her head on the stove. And she also remembers seeing the little girl as well. So a lot of information there. Good witness.
Just as a side note, this is clearly like a stand-in for Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah.
But Hansel and Gretel were siblings, and these two were married. I was shocked at first because I thought they would be siblings, and then Ken is like calling her honey or sweetheart or something, and I was like, oh, that's a random change. I don't know.
I've spoken to Amy about this before, but there's this Instagram account called Siblings or Dating, and there's a running joke on there that's like people together and it looks like they're hiking. That means they're unlikely to be siblings. So that was where my mind went. Where I was like, well, of course they're going to be married because siblings don't hike together. All because of this one Instagram page.
Yeah, it's a little weird they changed it because they didn't change any of the other main beats of the fairy tales, right? So Sam and Dean kind of drive up to this house in the woods and they are looking around it with their casual hunter stuff. There's no sulfur, but there's lots of EMF by the window where the little girl was stood. So Sam has a theory, which I love. He's like, I have a theory. He says that he's been thinking about fairy tales and he makes the link between Hansel and Gretel and the Three Little Pigs. And Sam describes the difference between the Disney version of fairy tales and the Grimm version of fairy tales, where they were maybe had morals, were warnings rather than necessarily had happy endings. This leads Dean to be quite sad that they have to go do some research at the end of this scene.
I thought it was kind of crazy that Sam jumped to the fairy tale thing after like 2 cases. I don't know, I feel like it's like 3 makes a pattern, not necessarily 2. And I feel like these cases were vague enough that your mind wouldn't necessarily go there, but I don't know.
Yeah, especially since like he kind of jumped to the conclusion that the old lady tried to eat them rather than just trying to like cut, like just
first one
kill it.
Especially just seems like you would just look at it and be like 3 guys got attacked. You would, I don't know, like it just.
There are other conclusions you could have jumped to because they were working on like a housing estate. Maybe they were like, I don't know, disturbing the territory of a monster or something, or. And then the woods as well could have somehow been related into some, like maybe it was a monster that was angry at nature. I don't know.
I mean, they've already done that with Dead in the Water. You know, the water was angry at people.
Right? Well, yeah, kind of.
Simplified.
It is a weird stretch to make. I mean, I guess they should have done one more in the story. I think you're right. I do. I think they should have done at least one more to be like solidifying this as fairy tales before Sam's like, I know everything that's going on now.
I wonder if it was also the description of the little girl, because as soon as I saw her on screen, I was like, oh yeah, that's Snow White. So we see Dean. He's the one who actually went and researched the little girl, and he checked for, violent deaths of children. And there was nothing. Just the way he describes all of this, so he's so exacerbated with the whole thing. It's like 0.
You don't know how many were little girls with black hair and pale skin?
0.
0. You don't know how many little girls with black hair and pale skin that have gone missing? Right again. Zip, zilch, nada.
Tell me you got something good, because I've totally wasted the last 6 hours.
He was very aggressive about it.
I mean, I kind of understand that. Spending 6 hours... That's a long time to be just sort of sat reading and like going through records, that's a lot of dust.
He probably needs to eat.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
So Sam, out of nowhere, it comes up with this like other theory. So he's gone from like fairy tales to like talking about ghost psychics. I don't know who Lillian Bailey is. Like, she's supposed to be a British psychic medium that he brings up from the 1930s. And he says she would go into a trance, and then he says, so get this, which I loved.
Yes.
Every time.
Oh, so good. Her thoughts and actions were controlled by the spirits that she summoned, so maybe that's happening.
See, she'd go into these unconscious states where, get this, her thoughts and actions were completely controlled by spirits.
The ghost puppet master.
Yeah.
Think that's what this kid is doing? Sending Wolf Boy and Grandma into trances, making them go kill crazy?
As they walk through this, like, park talking about this, Dean says to Sam, like, this is bizarre, like, even for us. And then I thought it was a goose honking, and I don't... Which, in fairy tales, would have made sense, maybe, if there was a goose. Like, they could have put in a goose, but it wasn't. It was the big...
And a mother goose fairy tale.
Yeah, right? But it was the big frog from before. Sam says, yeah, like, that's completely normal. Like, to be fair, it's a frog in a park. Like, okay, fine.
I know. I thought this was ridiculous. They're staring down at this frog and they're like, well, that must be magical or something. It's a frog. I mean, it's a big frog, but I don't know. Normal looking frog.
It's just a frog, guys. Chill out. Like,
I guess there aren't frogs in Vancouver?
Maybe not, yeah.
All right, maybe it is fairy tales. Totally messed up fairy tales. I'll tell you one thing, there's no way I'm kissing a damn frog.
I just wrote the note, why are you the princess, Dean?
I know. Why does he... He instantly puts himself in the position of the princess.
Yeah. And then I think he realised what he did, because for the rest of this episode, constantly is just ribbing Sam about liking fairy tales. Like, he didn't just make a reference, right?
And he makes references too. Like, he makes just as many references to fairy tales as Sam does for the rest of this episode.
And he fully pretends that he's never read, like, a fairy tale or watched a Disney movie, and that I will not ever believe that Dean has never watched a Disney movie.
Right. Later, like a couple minutes later in the episode, where I swear he's the one that figures out that it's Snow White and not Sam. He just pretends that he doesn't know.
Now you pointed it out, Danny, like, Sam making these, like, wild leaps is just, like...
This messed with me so much.
Yeah.
Because the pumpkin.
Well, again, Dean tries to rationalize it, but then they focus on the pumpkin and a mouse does run across.
Catches Sam's eyes. He's just looking around the park and, like, he sees a house in the distance with a pumpkin on the porch. Just like, oh, you know what? Cinderella. And then we get the shot of the mouse running across. Like,
That's
like
true.
he just saw a pumpkin near Halloween and was just like, oh, you know what? Cinderella. She's like, it's a pumpkin. It's a frog. What are you talking about, Sam?
Right.
This is why people believe in conspiracy theories. It's because of wild leaps like this. It's the same kind of, like, easily convinced.
You are not wrong. You are not wrong.
Oh my god.
He sees the pumpkin before the mouse is even there. Like, he
That's
suggests
true.
Cinderella before we see the mouse. It makes me so frustrated. Like, I can't trust Sam's, like, intuition at all now, if I hadn't before. Because it's just like, it's a pumpkin. And Dean says that it's near Halloween. Like, it's autumn and it's a pumpkin. This makes me so upset.
I love trying to rationalize these things. I'm going to do it. Because Sam, this isn't the first or the last time ever that Sam does this. And, like, I reckon that he has some kind of weird sixth sense intuition from all the, like, weird, like, powers and psychic abilities and stuff. But what it looks like to the outside is that his brain just works in mysterious ways.
Well, there's all this stuff where Dean makes fun of him for knowing too much about fairy tales, but he's kind of right in that, wow, Sam, your brain just jumped really quickly to fairy tales here. Like, on the one hand, Dean's making kind of homophobic jokes. On the other hand, he's kind of right.
Pumpkin that turns into a coach and the mice that become horses.
Dude, could you be more gay? Don't answer that.
Okay, fine. And, like, no, normally, yeah, I would go off on it, but, like, it's early 2000s and, like, people were still doing this, so
I think I was making You're So Gay jokes in 2007. So.
I'm definitely not.
I know for sure I was. It's embarrassing, and I wish I hadn't done it, but like...
I was like a teenager, so like a young teenager, so I don't care. I don't have any regrets.
We've all grown and changed as people. So.
This is true. This is very true.
In this case, it's played for comedic effect because, like, I guess men aren't allowed to know stuff about fairy tales in this universe, or apparently this one. So, you know.
Well, so in my mind, Sam knows more about the Grimm fairy tales than he knows about the Disney ones. Like, he knows of Disney, and obviously, like, but it seems like Dean's the one who knows about Disney fairy tales.
I think you're giving him I think you're it's giving him a pass too much. I think he fully knows every single thing and has ever like watched all the Disney movies. What else are they doing in those motel rooms other than watching like crappy movies?
Well, I'm also trying to think, and Danny might know more, obviously, from actually living in the States, but like, I don't feel like Disney movies really came on, like, it was all the like the knockoff Disney movies that will come on TV, not the actual ones, because like of licensing.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I can't think of it that I don't think that Disney movies really came on, except maybe like the crappy sequels. I don't know if those ever came on TV. I mean, what we did do back in the day was just go to video stores and rent them all the time. Yeah, I don't know about it on TV.
Dean and Sam are blockbusters. I want someone to do it, please.
like they would rent them from the video stores, but then they would just never return them. So they just had like a pile of like those labelless, unmarked like DVDs from video stores that they just carried around with them.
I love that.
They wouldn't have DVDs though. They would have VHSs.
That's true, VHS.
Oh man, the nostalgia. This is pinging him. I love it so much.
Do you ever miss VHS?
No.
I do. Right. Okay. I do. I love something about those analog things. Like, I miss cassette tapes. I just, there's something about them,
I miss
right?
cassettes so bad.
Yeah.
So the thing I do miss about cassette tapes and VHS is the satisfaction of like fast forwarding and like seeing it go fast forward. Like like when you try to do that with digital stuff, it doesn't have the same feeling, and like you skip too far and all that kind of stuff. But there was definitely something really satisfying, especially like, so you've just recorded like something off of TV, right? And you're trying to go through the commercials, and it's just like you can watch the commercials and fast forward and like not worry about skipping into whatever you recorded. That's what I miss. Or something very specific.
Screen, like, speed up and get kind of fuzzy.
Yeah.
Which you don't see now because you just skip forward. You don't get to actually fast forward.
No, I love the noise. Like the...
Yeah.
Yes. So, Sam, having made these completely fantastical leaps, was correct. Because as they break into the house, they hear a female voice that says, "Help me, I'm here." So they find this woman who's been pretty badly beaten, and she's like cuffed to like an old-timey stove by the looks of it. And Sam like gets a lockpick and sort of unlocks her cuffs. She tells them that her stepmom just freaked out, but the stepmother is nowhere to be found. Like, she's obviously left the house. Dean looks up and sees like the little girl sort of poking her head out from the door, and decides to follow her, and sort of follows her through the house. And he starts to talk to her, but like she doesn't respond in any way. She then flickers away, so it's clear that it's confirmation that it's a ghost. But in its place is a very real apple.
Yeah, a real apple. So I guess ghosts can manifest real objects. Cool.
They move things. So what if the apple was just in like the kitchen? Because they were just in the kitchen themselves.
You're smarter than me. That's probably absolutely true.
I mean, that's it. There's no way that the episode like explains that. I'm just explaining the episode's mistakes for it.
The red apple gives me big Once Upon a Time vibes. Like, I do love that show. I have a really good story related to that, actually. I might put this in, I might not. So I used to teach science, and we were doing a heart dissection, and this was with like 12-year-olds. And there was a girl in my class who was like a big Once Upon a Time fan. Like, she found out that I liked it and was like, "Oh my gosh." I knew she liked it because she had like on her phone case. And she said to me, "Can I hold the heart?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally." So I like gave her this heart to hold, and she just stood there like laughing maniacally like the evil queen for once upon a time. Just like absolute joy. It's such a good kid. Yeah, so they discovered this apple and they kind of meet outside, and Dean's like looking at it. He kind of throws it to Sam as he walks up to the Impala. Sam says that the paramedics have picked up the woman that they found. I always like it when they resolve what actually happens to the people they find.
Yeah.
Even throwaway lines is quite satisfying.
So, little girl, shiny red apple. I'm guessing that means something to you, fairy tale boy?
I think it's Snow White.
Snow White. Oh, I saw that movie. Oh, the porn version anyways. There was this wicked stepmother. Whew, she was wicked.
There is a wicked stepmother. And she tries to kill Snow White with a poison apple.
But the apple doesn't actually kill the girl, right?
No. Puts her into a deep sleep. So deep it's almost like she's dead.
Here's my theory: is when we see Dean like pick up the apple in like the previous scene, he gets this like angry look on his face.
Yeah.
And it's like, it looks like he knows what this means. Like he's already made the deduction of what happened to this little girl, and like he has already gotten angry. And then when we see him holding the apple in the next scene and like waiting for Sam, he looks very like stiff, sort of pissed off. I don't know. I just think he already made the deduction and then pretends that he doesn't.
Yeah.
Hasn't.
His pop culture is too vast and too broad to not immediately get this. It's been established previously that he knows, like, the pop culture references he throws out sometimes are so obscure and so random that, like, why would he not have knowledge of, like, fairy tales and all that kind of stuff? So I think you're right. I think he definitely figured it out. But because he'd maybe dug into Sam a bit too much earlier, I had to wait for Sam to come do the explanation at the car.
Yeah, well, now he already made the "could you be more gay" joke.
Mm-hmm.
And for his own fragile psyche, he now has to... like, if he hadn't brought that up, maybe he could have managed it, but...
And just the sort of re-establishing, like, oh, I'm so far removed from this because I've only ever watched the porn version of Snow White. Like, how could I possibly have, seen this in any other form of media? Because I'm, like, a real manly guy, so... This little interaction is just very telling of, like, Dean's own insecurities, I feel.
It's like stating his heterosexuality in this fairy tale episode.
Absolutely.
Dean knows more because Sam says there's this wicked stepmother and she tries to kill Snow White with a poison apple. Dean's response is, but the apple doesn't actually kill her. I feel like of all the fairy tales, I do feel like Snow White is probably done the most. That and Cinderella. And so Sam just says, yeah, no, it puts her in a deep sleep. Sam tosses the apple back to Dean and they drive off.
At the hospital, they talk to a nurse and she says that they don't have any comatose little girls, which is like, I guess they've still got their badges on them because that's a weird thing to tell people who've come into the hospital. But they said most of them are old guys and Callie. And it turns out that there's this girl called Callie who is the doctor who they've met many times so far. It's his daughter. And they kind of cut to him reading fairy tales to her while she is... It just looks like she's sleeping, essentially, but obviously comatose.
She's not a little girl anymore. A grown woman.
Yes.
She's been in a coma for a very long time.
Yeah, and she has the very dark hair that we've seen on the little girl ghost thing so far. I say ghost thing.
Immaculate makeup.
Yeah, her makeup's really good for someone who's in a coma in a hospital.
Which I feel like I've seen this, heard this somewhere before, is that a lot of the time, the friends and family of comatose patients will come in and do their makeup for them. It's I feel like I've heard this somewhere. This is something people do.
Yeah, that's kind of lovely, actually, though, I think. Look your best, I guess. So the story that the doctor is reading to her is Little Red Riding Hood. Kind of as he's reading it, we see an old lady with some bags in a car park, kind of cutting between them. And a younger guy helps her. And then just something seems to overcome him and he attacks her in the car. And we see the wily coyote on his arm.
So is this supposed to be the same quote-unquote wolf that attacked the three brothers?
I think so.
Or is the tattoo, like, manifested by the ghost?
I think it's the same person. I'm guessing, like, since this girl is fixated on, like, this guy being a wolf in, you know, in the first story, that it would make sense that he would continue to be a wolf.
How does he tear apart those two guys?
Good point.
Dude, with, like, human teeth.
You know, good questions. Good questions.
Supernatural ghost powers.
Yeah, because they did say, like, the ghost puppet thing, so maybe, you know, he got super strength because he's being a ghost, but I don't know.
No explanation. It's bad writing.
No. Well, because it's usually one person, right? One person is the one who's being affected, so he's the person who's being affected by the ghost, so it could very well be.
I don't know about that one person thing.
Yeah. Hansel being, like, way too hungry and eager to just go into a random old lady's house.
And doesn't Dean get affected by it later? I think.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. But does he get affected by it? Oh, no. Yeah, you're right.
Well, does he get affected by the girl? By Chuck?
Oh, look.
Is it the same thing, functionally?
I feel like we could tack that onto any statement of anything Dean ever does. It's like, well, did Dean do this or was it Chuck?
But it's especially relevant in an episode about them being in stories.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. Oh, it makes my brain hurt, Danny. Why? Because, okay, no, this is a good question. Maybe I'll bring it up later. But, like, does Chuck... So, do the... This is such a stupid question to ask. Does the ghost narrative supersede Chuck's narrative? Did the ghost wrestle control from Chuck of the narrative for those, like, 2 minutes or whatever? Oh, who has the narrative authority during this episode?
There's a specific thing that Dean doesn't do. And is it because Sam and Dean wrestle the control back of the narrative for a second?
That's what I think too. Okay, right, let's get...
We will for a second.
Let's get to that scene. Okay, right, okay. This is great. No, I absolutely...
So we can break it down.
I 100% love this. I want to break it down. Dean and Sam kind of arrive and they see this doctor with Callie and they kind of ask him some questions and they find out that she has been in this coma since she was 8 because she was poisoned by swallowing some bleach. And, you know, they think Callie swallowed that bleach. And her stepmom brought her to the hospital. Her stepmother had died last year for the doctor as well, so she's not around anymore.
And the doctor dad is like, I have no idea how she got her hands on that bleach. She figured it out. Hint, hint.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. So Sam and Dean basically work out that the stepmom poisoned her. You know, it goes with the story.
The apple and everything.
Well, you're right. Snow White in spades.
Yep. Stepmom poisons the girl, puts her into a deep sleep. What's the motive, you think?
Could be like Misha Barton. Sixth Sense, not the OC.
What?
Also, just as a side note, hearing Dean say Misha, like not in that context, was real weird for me.
Dean points out that, like, Sam knows fairy tales, but I know movies. But the thing is, those could go hand in hand because there are fairy tale movies.
Yeah.
A lot of them, actually.
So, yeah.
Like, speaking of Snow White, that was, like, a really, like, early animated film.
Yeah. You're not making a huge distinction there, Dean.
It's true.
So, this whole thing with the stepmother poisoning Callie, all because, like, of this apple and the, you know, the correlation between her and, like, Snow White, I was not buying it. Like, I was like, what? Like, the entire time that this was good, like, the conversation that later on that he has with the doctor, I was like, how can you make such bold statements?
Callie herself was the one that, like, gave the hint with the apple. Versus all the other leaps were just sort of apropos of nothing, but this is, like, the ghost specifically leaving a clue.
Okay, but it fits too nicely, right? She's poisoned, she's in a coma, and her stepmom, she has a stepmother who brought her in. So I get I think that's fine. I think the leap here that Sam makes is that the stepmother was like, had Munchausen's by proxy, which is like basically where you have someone who's close to you, like you basically either think they're sick all the time or make them sick all the time to get kind of the attention that goes with it. Yeah. I think that's the leap.
To just be kind of like I don't know, an evil person. I don't know, like the specific diagnosis was a bit...
Yeah. Like, maybe something that would make more sense is that, like, you know, that she's the stepmother, so the doctor was, like, using all his time and attention on his daughter, and she was jealous. Like, that's more fairy tale story, like... Yeah, it was weird to put a diagnosis on this.
The armchair psychology. I was just like, okay.
Well, it's like, why does anyone hurt a kid? Like, why can't it just be for the same normal reasons that anyone hurts a kid? Why does it have to be specifically this, like, obscure diagnosis? I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It is an odd moment. Sam kind of thinks that Callie is basically angry, like her spirit is angry, and has slowly been, like, gaining power. And because she's been listening to fairy tales, that's how she's kind of expressing herself. Mm-hmm. They do bring up the point that they don't know what to do with this because they can't burn her bones because she's, like, alive.
Yeah, it's super weird she's a ghost, but alive.
My theory here is that she's in a ghost in the same way that Dean was a ghost in 201.
Well, I was thinking about that, like when he was following, like the ghost of Callie, like around the house, and she leaves like the apple for him. I was like, there's something about Dean and like being comatose and like following people down hallways. There's, I don't know, it's just like familiar.
I'm just putting feelings onto Dean here, but I mean, what else is this podcast for? But like, it's anger that something that bad could happen to a child, but also like the recognition that someone's trapped because of someone else's actions. Like he's kind of felt that, although he doesn't actually remember that, so maybe not.
He doesn't remember. I always forget that he has that wiped in his brain.
I know. It would have been better if he remembered this. It's just like. Mm-hmm. Storytelling wise, it would have been better if he remembered that whole thing in 201. There's reasons why he can't, but...
Or if what they could have done is have him get his memories back of that.
Yeah.
At the end of season 2.
Yeah.
And that plays into some of his sort of self-destructive tendencies at the end of season 2. They could have brought it like full circle like that.
I totally agree, because him deciding to go with Tessa is a defining moment of Dean's character that he doesn't remember doing.
And if to go along with his feeling of like he should be dead when he decides to make the deal for Sam's life, like that would have fit, but no, they didn't.
So they're kind of talking about this loudly in a whole hostel corridor about how they can't burn the bones of somebody, and
I know.
Luckily, you know, it's a hospital, and not only are they in the hospital, they are clearly in the ER. Yeah. Because of what happens next, of the grandma comes in. Like, have they never been to an ER? They are packed full of people all the time.
Yeah.
They asked the paramedic who brought this lady in about what's happened. They ask for her next of kin. He just gives that to them. The story that the doctor was reading to Callie was Little Red Riding Hood, so it all kind of fits together. And of course, in kind of season 3 style, I feel, because they do split up a lot in the first 2 seasons, but like the episodes we've watched so far of season 3, they're just constantly splitting up in the second half of the episode. So they split up. Sam is going to go figure out what Callie's deal is, and Dean is going to go...
I'm going to go stop the big bad wolf, which is the weirdest thing I've ever said.
And it's also not going to be the last weird thing he will ever say either. It'll just be in the long line of things that will have been said. And I do, there's something about the way he turns is very Dean, right? Like the kind of like the blank face look at Sam, and then the head turn, then his body turns.
Very stereotypical Dean in that moment.
Yeah.
It's the Dean when he's like in disbelief too.
Yeah.
It's like if you're doing an impression of Dean, that's how you play it.
Yeah.
Yes.
We kind of see this granddaughter. We can assume that it's her because she's wearing a bright red hoodie. She sees her grandma's car and gets into it because it's her grandma's car. But of course, as she says, "Hi, Grandma," the wolf guy.
It's just like a regular dude.
The regular wolf dude is in the front, and he kind of drives off with her.
Well, but he like makes he doesn't make it. They play like a sound of a wolf, but it's clearly not coming from his mouth. Like, he doesn't make the noise. It just plays like over the rest of the audio.
It is very strange.
When he's fighting with Dean, they have a bunch of just like generic
animal noises
that aren't coming from the wolf. It's just like ambient noise.
Just reminding the audience, because we're kind of dumb, I guess, that this guy is a wolf. Like, sometimes they put these cues in and you're like, you didn't need to remind us of this. Like, we are watching the episode, it's fine.
It's so cartoonish, but like it not like a good way.
Yeah, it takes you out of the episode. Like, as soon as I heard it, I was like, what?
We see Sam, and he's gone to talk to the doctor about Callie, and he's trying to kind of dance around the subject to start with, except he kind of outright calls his dead wife a murderer. Well, not murderer.
More or less.
More or less, yeah. I mean, she put this girl into a coma. And the doctor is clearly not happy with Sam saying this stuff, because as far as he knows, he's a random, like, police sketch artist.
He just came in and, like, made horrible accusations about his dead wife.
You know, the doctor goes into Callie's room and, like, closes the door and, like, shuts Sam out. And he kind of, like, deliberates for a second and then goes in.
No, listen, I don't have time to do this gently. If you don't listen to me, more people are going to get hurt. Because Callie is going to hurt them.
What the hell are you talking about?
You're going to think I'm crazy, but just understand me. Your daughter, Callie, is still here. She's a spirit.
And surprisingly, in the episode, it felt to me the doctor believes him, but it kind of sees why he does, because he goes, oh, you've seen her too.
Yeah, he's apparently been seeing her spirit. Yeah.
Makes it easier to convince people of ghosts if they've seen the ghost that you're talking about, you know.
And then Sam does describe the ghost, like the young girl in like the white dress, which is that's a lot more convincing. Is that Sam knows the exact image that Dad's been seeing.
He started off poorly and got better as he was trying to describe it. He should have maybe led with the first bit that he said, rather than like your wife poisoned your daughter. Like, that's a pretty hard thing to sell, right?
Yeah, and also the fact it doesn't really add to anything. It doesn't help the situation in any which way.
No.
Well, it kind of does, because that's what Callie was trying to get her dad to understand. Like, that's what she needed to move on, was that for her dad to know what happened to her.
I love the fact that Dean knows exactly where he needs to be, because he breaks down the door of this house and he sees the girl, like the little girl who's in Red Riding Hood, rescues her essentially, but then the big bad wolf is there.
I really enjoyed this fight, like when the wolf like appears behind Dean and kind of like throws Dean into like that set of cabinets. I thought it was a pretty good stunt. he gets thrown about so much. I don't know how they don't have like permanent sort of head trauma.
Either they do, and that explains a lot, or it's the Chuck effect.
Yeah.
Because Sam is knocked unconscious a billion times.
Every time they get like hurt, like a scar, like think of the big scars on their face and stuff that like instantly disappear. Okay, they've joked about like magic studio cream, but if you're actually thinking about Supernatural, was every time a scar disappeared from their face just Chuck forgetting to write it in that next chapter?
Oh, here's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck kind of is horny for them.
Yes.
He wants them to be pretty.
Yes.
He wants his special little boys to be pretty. And since I've said, oh God.
I love that. You're so right. It's so true, because he definitely has a Winchester fetish.
Well, it also works with like the metaphor of Chuck being the creators of the show, and obviously the creators of the show want their leads to be have sex appeal. So
this is 100% it. It's all Chuck. The scars, my gosh, I love it.
It's horny.
It explains so much.
It does.
Doesn't it? It explains everything.
It explains so much.
It does.
Is that why... Okay, I'm just rolling with this. Is that why Chuck gets so mad at them when they kind of almost, like, reject him, do you think?
Well, yeah. And also,
yes.
all of their like, significant others, all the romantic like partners die. He wants them all to himself.
I love the Chuck is horny theory. I think it's a very good one that should be presented to Rob Benedict.
He recently said in a con that he always played it as if Cass was Chuck's favorite, was like his favorite.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting as like a way to read the show.
I'm definitely going to look out for that when we get to those episodes.
I don't think that's at all in like the writing for the most part, but it's so interesting to see that as like the way he plays it.
Okay, so as they're fighting, we go back and see the Doctor, and he's telling Sam that he's sensed Callie's presence and has even seen her once. Sam said that she's basically trying to communicate with him and tell him something, tell him about her stepmom. At this point, Sam reveals that he's not a cop.
You're not a cop, are you?
No.
Then who are you?
Someone who knows a little bit about this kind of thing.
I don't know what my guess would have been if I was a doctor. Like, is Sam some kind of psychic or a medium that sort of just does this for a hobby, you know?
I mean, I might jump to like, you guys are X-Files, aren't you?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You're Mulder.
Well, I still maintain Scully and Mulder should have made some kind of cameo in Supernatural. 100%.
I do too.
And he's basically saying that Callie wants to be heard by her dad, which is true of everybody in this show. So we cut back to Dean and the wolf fighting. Dean sees some fabric scissors, and this is kind of significant because like the line the Doctor was reading to Callie earlier was about a huntsman slicing open the wolf's belly. I say foreshadowing this, like it's so blatantly done that it's not even really foreshadowing. This is where I think that Dean is under control of the fairy tale narrative.
Well, but he doesn't actually kill the wolf. He doesn't actually slice open his gut.
No, because I mean, so Callie basically like appears in the room with the Doctor and Sam, and at this point the Doctor kind of gets to talk to her because Sam has convinced him that this is happening, and he basically says to her like, I believe you, I'm really sorry that happened to you, and basically like does what she needs, you know, sees her, perceives her, and believes her story.
And then I think he says, I it's time for me to let you go.
I know the truth. It's time for you to let go. It's time for me to let you go.
After he kind of says this, we see him kind of like kiss her on the forehead, and then her monitor goes like very Hollywood. Beep. Dean and the wolf had been fighting during this, and like at one point like the wolf was like kind of strangling Dean, and then Dean managed to get the upper hand, and he was now kind of like straddling the wolf with those massive scissors above him. Just as he's kind of about to stab the wolf, the guy suddenly shouts like, "Stop, what are you doing?" Yeah, and he's very confused about where he is. So I think you're right. This is the bit where they broke out of the narrative because Callie had died.
So I have a little thing. Is in the Snow White story, there is also a huntsman, and in this story, the huntsman is sent by the evil queen to kill Snow White. But the huntsman can't do it, and he decides not to. He lets Snow White go. And if we're talking about like two different stories, both with huntsmen, these hunters, one of them is Dean. What if the other one's Sam? And the thing is, Sam kind of kills Callie.
Yeah.
So he breaks out of the narrative by actually killing the White. And Dean breaks out of the narrative by not killing the bad wolf, which makes them both sound terrible, but contextually is like the right thing.
It's almost like breaking out of the narrative is a good thing in this show that can have positive consequences. No, I love that actually. I've never thought of it that way, that like Sam was the other huntsman, but it totally makes sense actually. Yeah, because you're right, like his actions end up killing her, but I wonder how much Callie orchestrated them being there through the storyline.
She leaves the clue for Dean, the apple. So yeah, were they written to get to that point where they end everything, where they set Callie free, and was Dean meant to fight the wolf but not kill it? And what did Chuck want? And my brain hurts.
No, okay, so I can make this worse. So the thing that breaks them out of the narrative is the Doctor agreeing to let his daughter go. That definitely doesn't have any parallels with Sam and Dean.
I have this whole theory about the dad where I think on like a surface level, the dad kind of seems like John, like if you think about Dean being comatose and John not being willing to let Dean go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think on a bigger level, which is interesting because his name is Garrison and John was in the military. I think on a bigger level, the dad is Dean.
Yeah.
And he couldn't let Sam go.
Yeah.
And now because he couldn't let Sam go and he brought Sam back, Sam now has all these destructive powers that he's going to let loose and is going to hurt a bunch of people. Mm-hmm. And eventually the only way to stop the fallout from him hurting all these people is for him to eventually die in the end of season 5.
Yeah. It's wild to think, like, because I agree. Obviously the Doctor and Callie are like mirroring Sam and Dean in this episode because they blatantly bring it up in a minute. But like, it's interesting to think that could even be foreshadowing like the end of season 5 kind of. I mean, to be fair, this constant back and forth of like, you should die, no, you should die is a constant problem in their relationship.
Well, I think it's interesting because Callie was poisoned by her stepmother.
Yeah.
And that's why she ends up having this ability to like hurt people. Because of Mary's decision, Sam was poisoned by demon blood.
Yeah.
And now he has the ability to hurt people that has this fallout seasons 4 and 5. And it's like it all kind of comes back to the mother kind of ruining everything. No offense to Mary, I love Mary.
No, I agree with you. A lot of blame is put on Mary and like mothers sometimes, and generally like parental figures in Supernatural. I like this though. I think the parallel really, really works actually, and like it's interesting to watch it on a rewatch, like knowing where the show's going to go. Also knowing that they didn't know that they were going to get there in the way they did because of like the writer's strike and stuff in season 3 and like all of that. The themes that they bring up over and over again work so well in conjunction with each other that like when you do this, you can't help but make those connections. The big board with the red strings.
Well, so I mean, I'm going to completely derail this a little bit, so I'm sorry, but like the father, the Doctor, is quite literally the narrator, right?
Yeah.
In this episode. So when he decides to stop telling the story is when everybody like all of their stories break down.
Can you not for one time?
From that perspective, the only way for the story to end is if Chuck wants it to. If he decides to stop narrating.
Yeah. Which...
Yep. He kind of does, but then it kind of backfires.
No, that hurts my brain. Annabelle, why? Both of you, why? So, like, just the whole themes of Supernatural around, like, breaking out the narrative and, like, free will and all of that, they really did write themselves into, like, one day you're gonna have to kill the narrator and, like, breaks out yourself, aren't you? And, like, it never really came... Okay, yeah, fine. Okay, they didn't kill Chuck, but they kind of broke him down, but it never really came to anything. And this is season 3. They're making these like themes and anyway, wasted potential of Supernatural sometimes.
I'm still obsessed with the idea that the show should have ended with like the screen, like they defeat Chuck or whatever, and then the screen goes black or whatever, or like we get like the TV screen like static and then like a error message or something, like the idea that we see the actual camera basically shut down.
Yeah.
So that we know that the characters are still there, but we can no longer see them because they're free.
I love that too. I've seen that idea. I love it. Good. Yeah. But they wrote the ending for people who could tune back into Supernatural after like maybe watching the first 2 seasons and like so they could watch it and get an ending out of that. The Chuck and like the ending of the narrative would have been absolutely amazing. I would have loved it. You would have loved it. If anyone had watched it thinking, oh, I finally watched the season finale of Supernatural, I haven't watched it in 10 years, they would have been like, what the fuck just happened?
But then it would have got them back into the show because they would have been like, what?
But who cares about people who haven't watched the show in a decade? Like, you don't make the finale for those people.
Can you go tell the CW that?
I hadn't watched in like a handful of years. Even me, you don't make the finale for. Like, you make it for the people who are currently watching.
You would hope so, but still. Sam, Dean and the Doctor kind of regroup after this has happened, and they kind of explain to the Doctor that he's kind of saved the day by perceiving his daughter and listening to her. What the doctor says is that
Callie was the most important thing in my life. But I should have let her go a long time ago.
See you around, Doc.
I sure hope not.
You know what he said? Some good advice.
Is that what you want me to do, Dean? Just let you go?
It's like the episode has a moral on it, but it's more like Dean finds the moral, and like it might not have had a moral on its own, but Dean decided to find one.
my actual favorite things are like Lucifer, the TV show, has a great way of doing this, where literally Lucifer makes every single episode about himself.
I think about that all the time. I think that Sam Dean did that a bunch, but on a more subtle level.
Yeah, and this is it. I mean, that's all TV though. I'm watching Grey's at the moment, Grey's Anatomy, and it's all like that. How is this patient relating to my own life at the moment? Yeah. Lucifer was great because it actually called it out for what it was, like the narcissism of it.
Well, and it's such a fun joke. It's every episode, but I don't know. It never stopped being funny to me.
It's very true.
He's like stretching every like scenario to be related to him in like really ridiculous ways. It's like, nope, that has nothing to do with you at all, Lucifer. Really nothing.
And also the fact that like the other characters as well like start to call him out on it too, and he's just like, no, but it's true though, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and his like therapist, you know, back when he still saw her, constantly calling him out on that.
I love it so much. It's great because it shows it. But I can't watch other TV shows now without thinking like, well, how are they going to relate this to themselves? I kind of want that on a t-shirt. I want like a Lucifer, and I just want a speech that says like, how am I going to relate this to myself?
How can I make this about me?
Yeah, how can I make this about me? So
what is it? There's that one like tweet that's like a meme that's like, I am uncomfortable when not about me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly Lucifer. Like this perfect on point characterization. Sam says to Dean, like, is that what you want me to do? Do you want me to just let you go? And Dean doesn't say anything. There's kind of a long, drawn-out pause before he just walks away from Sam.
Oh, I just remembered something.
Yeah.
Related to this. Early on in the episode, when they were talking to, like, the surviving brother, he was like, I just lost both of my brothers.
Yes.
It's so terrible. How would you feel? He says to Sam.
Those are my brothers. This guy, he killed my brothers. How would you feel?
Can't imagine anything worse.
It has been the tension in this episode about letting people go. What I thought was interesting about the way they shot this, once, you know, Dean doesn't say anything, is he literally walks away from Sam and Sam just stands there watching him go. They've had this conversation a few times. I feel like this is the most sort of condensed version of it. They're not really dancing around it anymore, maybe, which is unusual for them, I feel, that they're actually say it outright.
But it's a short season, so they have to get the...
That's true.
You got to pack it full of emotion.
So we're at the motel. We see that it's a full moon, so of course they managed to fix it all in 2 days. Good job.
Good job.
Dean is asleep, cut over to Sam's bed, and he's got like a backpack on it, and it looks like he's about to leave. I forgot that this is how this episode ended, and I was like, he's gonna just ditch? What?
What is this, season 4, and he's sneaking off to go drink demon blood?
I thought it was a demon blood thing as well.
It's shot the same way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Like this whole sneaking off. I was like, he's already going to go meet Ruby? No, that's not happening now, right? But it turns out he's actually going to a crossroads. I'm fairly certain the difference between this crossroads and the one that Dean made his deal at is that there's a signpost, because there's a water tower there and everything.
I was thinking the same thing. I wrote in my notes, like, is every crossroads in the show the exact same location? Like, do they shoot it in the exact same place?
Is this idea that they have to go to this very specific type of crossroad? I know that they have to dig up the middle of the road, so obviously it has to be a road that's not really used. But I just think about how many crossroads I encounter, like, on a daily basis when I drive somewhere, and I'm like, it literally could be any of these, but it's always this one specific. And obviously, it's for TV sake. But I'm just like, okay, all right.
Okay,
can we mix it up a little bit, please?
So imagine it was like a heavily trafficked like crossroads.
Yeah.
And you somehow managed to like bury the box in the middle of the road. Would a demon just show up in the middle of the road when there's like a bunch of cars like driving by? You know, sort of Toy Story rules, would they not appear if there have to be a deserted crossroads?
I always think of that scene where it's the scene where Casca's like, got him, where Crowley's kissing that guy under, it's like, it's a crossroads, but it's like an overpass.
Yeah, it's underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do wonder how annoyed crossroad demons were when Europeans started putting roundabouts everywhere. Because like I don't drive past that many crossroads. Like in England and a lot of Europe, we don't really have like intersections like they do in America with like traffic lights. There are way less traffic lights here. Instead, there's like roundabouts where I don't know how to describe a roundabout. You go.
Does that still count? Could you just bury the box in the middle of the roundabout?
I guess maybe if it still points in the same like cardinal directions, but often roundabouts have like 4 or 5 exits, so I don't know.
Oh, that's true.
Does a crossroad have to have 4 roads, or does it? If it's just the meeting place of 4 or more?
That's a good point.
Like, what are the parameters of a crossroad? This is important information. We have to figure this out.
I feel like that is a question that I would like to ask Mark Sheppard if I ever go to a convention again where he's at. Is like, how do you think Crowley feels about roundabouts? He's the only one who would get it as well, because he's British. I really like the shot they do whenever they summon a crossroads demon. Like, it always goes round. Like, they obviously thought it was cool the first time that they did it, so they decided to do it every time after.
I mean, kind of back to Danny's point of like, do they, like, is it Toy Story rules? Because it takes a fair amount of time for the demon to actually show up.
Yeah.
Like looking over Sam's shoulder while he's facing camera, and then like looking over his shoulder and he's facing the same direction as the camera. Like they're really sort of checking all of the roads. And then she shows up and it's just like, okay, but like I swear in the other ones they show up instantly.
I know there are times when they summon Crowley in later seasons with like a summoning circle.
Yeah.
Where he waits, where he takes a while to appear. I don't know if that applies to Crossroads as well.
She clearly knows it's Sam's, and obviously because you have to have your picture in it. So they know it's Sam Winchester who's calling them, so that maybe they're like down there like, God, who's gonna go? I don't want to go. It was your turn. I went last time. You made the deal with Dean. You go see him. Because we know that demons talk to each other. We've established this.
Yeah. I like that, the argument. And she blatantly got roped into this one, honestly. It is the same demon. I really get confused between the vessels for this particular demon, because I feel like they always choose a kind of dark-haired woman, but I feel like it's the different woman this time as well.
It is a different woman.
If it was the same one or not.
I couldn't tell you. They're too similar.
What can I do for you, Sam?
You can beg for your life.
We were having such a nice conversation. Then you had to go and ruin the mood.
If I were you, I'd drop the wisecracks and start acting scared.
But she's not really scared of him. She kind of asks about like how he has the cult, because she said it's been remade, which I thought was a really interesting way to put that. She kind of surmises that it's Ruby and says that she's a pain in her ass, essentially. Sam's come to make an offer, which we kind of knew, because they talked about it at the car at the beginning of the episode, that basically everyone can live. She can live, Dean can live, Sam can live if she cancels the deal, and if she doesn't, he's going to shoot her. She laughs at him, which is very demon to do, and says that it's tough talk but not very convincing. Do you even want to break the deal? Now, I didn't remember where this conversation was going, and I thought at this point she was going to talk about the fact the contract maybe can't be broken and that Sam would possibly die, but it kind of went in a whole different direction. I was like, oh.
Aren't you tired of cleaning up Dean's messes? Of dealing with that broken psyche of his? Aren't you tired of being bossed around like a snot-nosed little brother? You're stronger than Dean. You're better than him.
Watch your mouth.
Admit it. You're here, going through the motions. But truth is, you'll be a tiny bit relieved when he's gone.
Shut up.
No more desperate, sloppy, needy Dean. You can finally be free.
I said, shut up.
It kind of is leading on from the conversation that was had in the previous episode.
Yeah.
Very much so, in that, like, she was saying, you know, aren't you tired of cleaning up Dean's messes?
Doesn't Azazel say something similar?
Yeah. So
about, like, dumping Dean?
In Sin City, there's a priest who's a demon, and he's saying to Sam that, you know, you always have to clean up your brother's messes, like, you could do things greater than this. And you're right, like, Azazel has a similar conversation with, like, why are you always stuck with your brother kind of thing, he's just dragging you down. And then this demon's basically saying the same thing to Sam. It's almost like they have an agenda.
It's almost like they all have a Slack that they chat on, like a Discord or something.
It's the hell newsletter they established.
She says the line, don't you want to, something, don't you want to get rid of him, no more desperate, sloppy, needy Dean.
Yeah.
Which is such a, like, intense insult. It's a very intense insult. That's what he said.
Is it an intense insult because, like we were saying earlier, it's grounded in reality, because Dean is kind of desperate and needy at times. He is. The need for Sam to be constantly, like, with him or, like, some kind of family is kind of limiting for Dean at times, I feel.
But I feel like, okay, there's a difference of knowing that in, like, within your family unit, and then some outsider pointing all of that out.
Absolutely. How do they know? So, and this has come up before, like, I think it was the same Crossroads demon, like, pointing out all of Dean's flaws, essentially. Like, how do they know so much about, like, what's going on in his head that, like, even he can't express most of the time? It's really supernatural.
I don't know always about what's in their head, but like in terms of, like, analyzing the two of them, we know that Sam's been followed around by people possessed by demons for most of his life. So how many, you have to wonder, like, are there a lot of times on cases when there are people secretly possessed by demons that are just, like, watching or, like, following them around?
This is a good point.
If you're thinking about, like, the hell, like, long game, or the even longer long game of Chuck, like, they could be being stalked by demons that are just basically security cameras.
Yeah.
This whole time.
And it kind of makes sense, like, with Casey in the last episode talking about being, like, a fanatic, like, would have followed Sam as the leader. So how do we know there aren't kind of, like, fanatical demons following Sam's every movement and, like, reporting back? I mean, it seems more likely than not, actually, that does happen.
And, I mean, on top of, you know, that the insult that she had said, you know, no more desperate, sloppy, needy Dean, she says you can finally be free, which really does lean into what this episode was also about, like, letting go. Yeah. So, but this is almost flipping it on its head. Like, you let him go and you can be free.
Yeah.
Sam's not willing to do that, and Dean's not willing to do that either, to, like, not let Sam die.
It's really interesting because, like, Dean actually does want to be free of his responsibilities, but, like, not at the cost of Sam. And Sam almost doesn't mind those responsibilities at times. So he wouldn't give up Dean to get rid of them because they're not as a big a burden on Sam as they are on Dean.
Sam wants more responsibilities. He wants to be treated less like a kid.
Yeah.
And, like, that's his real problem with his relationship with Dean, at least at this point. Like, otherwise I don't know that he would have a lot of problems. So the demon is, like, picking on, like, the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
Like, not about Dean being needy, but about Dean, like even the beginning of this episode, the Dean's like, I'm the oldest. Well, like, what they should have been picking out was the lack of, like, equality between the two of them.
Sam, of course, says, just shut it to the demon. And she says, like, I think he doth protest too much. Like, okay, Shakespeare.
Ask me.
All right, I love your crap. You let Dean out of his deal right now.
Sorry, sweetheart, but your brother's an adult. He made that deal of his own free will, fair and square. It's ironclad.
Every deal can be broken.
Not this one.
He made that deal of his own free will.
I know.
Did he, though?
I have a wild, unsubstantiated theory that boils down to the dude wasn't actually supposed to make the deal.
Yeah.
That he made the deal out of free will. So maybe.
Oh, I don't know. See, right, I flip-flop on this continuously. Was Dean always supposed to make the deal because it kind of works for where the story's going with, like, Lucifer and Michael, because they needed them both alive to that to happen? Or was there some other plan that Dean disrupted by making that deal, which is what the demons suggest? So
Well, Alistair in season 4 says that that John was supposed to be the one to break the seals.
Yeah.
And there's all this stuff with Chuck where he wants the brothers to kill each other. And we know that John told Dean in season 2 that he might have to kill Sam.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of that, he actually brings Sam back. And, like, what if the whole plot in those seasons was supposed to be about the two of them killing each other or something? I don't know, but like, what if Dean, and we know that, like, the show perspective, Dean was not supposed to go to hell. He was supposed to get out of it, but the writer's strike happened. So from, like, a meta perspective, Dean going to hell does kind of break the narrative.
Yeah.
It is kind of like a weird moment of free will. So, like, maybe Dean was never supposed to go to hell, and maybe John was supposed to break the seals, and that way we wouldn't have to, that way Cass wouldn't get involved, the angels wouldn't have gotten involved, and then Chuck could have maintained more control over the narrative, because we know that Cass breaks the narrative. Yeah. I don't know. It's not a fully fleshed out theory, but it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting if Dean making the deal was free will.
I think it's interesting because I've always equated with breaking the seals as that's why Dean had to be Michael's vessel, and I don't know where that's come from because John could have easily have been Michael's vessel also. The vessel situation fits too nicely into, like, Chuck's obsession with, like, the Cain and Abel storyline and them killing each other. So, but you're right, John could have broken the seals and Dean could still have been the Michael sword. It still could have happened that way.
Did hell make him less likely to say yes?
I mean, yeah.
More cynical, certainly. Less likely to believe that angels are gonna, like, fix things.
Well, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I think you're right. Like, Dean, when he comes back from hell, is, like, changed. So it possibly could have changed, you know, maybe he would have given in much more easily to Michael if he hadn't gone. I like the idea that it's breaking out the narrative. I equally like the fact that Chuck made him do it and it wasn't of his own free will.
Yeah, I like both versions. Yeah,
it's interesting. I think it's fine to like both. Like, I think it works both ways.
Schrodinger's free will.
You came up with so much good stuff. I want to put on a sticker this week. Honestly. Sam kind of, you know, this apparently because he did this of his own free will, it's an ironclad situation. But Sam says that every deal can be broken, which is kind of true. Mm-hmm. But for them, it tends to escalate the situation if you do that. The demon says, not this one. And she talks about having a boss, essentially. Like someone who's in charge. So even if Sam kills her, it's not going to break the deal. Someone else is in charge who really wants Dean's soul. I can't think that we ever find out who her boss is. Yeah, is it supposed to be Lilith? Like,
but she says he, which I mean, yeah. I guess demon gender. Who cares? But, like, you know, in the scope of Supernatural, I don't think he was meant to refer to Lilith. But who else was it?
We also know that, like, so obviously again in the last episode, Casey was talking about Lucifer, but nobody has met Lucifer. Nobody really knows if he exists. Is that a similar case with a bit of, like, demon hierarchy? So, yes, she has a boss, but we don't know who that is. And then his boss is Lilith. So yeah, he would still really want the soul for Lilith.
I can almost swear that, like, somewhere in season 3 they say that Lilith has the deed to Dean's soul. But maybe she got the deed later on. She's not the one that holds it right now.
I assumed Lucifer just because of the he business. Because I agree, I think Lilith would make the most sense. And yeah, you're right, like, demon gender shouldn't exist in this show, but it does. So, unfortunately. So
twist, it's Alistair.
Yeah. No. That's the worst. That's the worst person it could be.
I know.
Yeah.
I do like this conversation because it does lay a lot of like stuff about their relationship and stuff. I couldn't help thinking through this whole thing that they were just writing this to like stave off the fan bit of like, why couldn't you just kill the Crossroads demon with the gun? Like, because I mean, Sam does ask her who her boss is, and she just says, not as cuddly as me, and I can't tell you. She says can't like she physically can't rather than that she won't. That may be true.
I'm sorry, Sam, but there's no way out of this one. Not this time.
And he kind of does a big Sam sigh and shoots her. Cold, very detached face shoots her. She has quite a long, drawn-out death, actually. Like, it takes a while for her to, like, flicker out.
I like it when they are shot by the cult and the demons, like, bounce backwards.
Yes.
Like, it's kind of silly. Like, they really just, like, recoil.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny.
Yeah. It's like, you've just been impacted by a tiny bullet, but act like you were just hit by a bazooka.
Which, like, bullets do kind of knock you back, but like, it's, like, only part of that. Like, their head is like, knocked back, but the rest of them kind of is still. So it's just this, like...
I feel like it looks like a full body impact. It's a proper, like, oof kind of thing. I love it as well. I agree with you. It's interesting that the flashes are still orange, you know. Definitely they've changed the gun in some way.
And it has been somewhat confirmed by this Crossroads demon.
Yeah, that the cult has been remade in some way. Which it has. I mean, Bobby remade it, but...
So I wrote, at my last line of my notes is, Gordon would be proud.
Of course he would.
Because it was very much it was, you know, there was no more information to be gleaned from this demon, so Sam just shot this person.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he killed another human. He was so hung up about it last episode, and this was just like, well, yep.
I don't know if you guys remember this, but I've seen the episode a bunch. At like the end of Mystery Spot, when we get like the 6 months into the future.
Yeah.
When Sam's alone and he's like hunting on his own, he's like very like stone faced and like killing a bunch and everything. It kind of reminds me of the way that Sam's acting here, which is like very cold and emotionless. Obviously, it's about the same thing, which is that it has to do with Dean's death.
I think that it's a window into who Sam is without Dean. It seems like, despite Sam's like protests about it, Dean does keep him on the kind of like, I want to say straight and narrow, but at the same time, Dean is the cause of it as well.
Yeah. I think it's more, I interpret it more as Sam acts this way because of what's happening to Dean, rather than that's what his nature is.
Fundamentally, Dean's effect on Sam is, at its most profound, is keeping Sam from running over dogs. And dating, like, a relatively boring woman for a year. That's what Dean saves Sam from.
That's 100% true. That's 100% true. I love that so much. Like, I appreciate it. I like them kind of showing a darker side of Sam. Like, we didn't really see it in season 1 2, even though he was supposed to be going dark side the whole time. He never really did. And we have this whole thing looming over, like, this season of, like, was Sam brought back wrong? And I kind of like the mystery around that, like, was he or wasn't he?
If one of my siblings was going to go to hell for me, and there was, like, a year left, I'd probably be doing some really drastic dark shit too.
I mean, this is it. At the fundamental core of Supernatural, like, it's about sibling relationships and how far you would go to protect your family, and like, this is showing that in pretty obvious terms.
It continues to show that every season.
Yeah.
The rest of the show.
It just gets more and more extreme.
Yeah. If you think about the most still the most shocking moment in Supernatural for me ever is Dean pulling a gun on Sam in season 15. Like, the most shocking. Like, I was so surprised, and because we've had like so many seasons of them protecting each other constantly and like sacrificing themselves over and over again for each other, that it was really, that was the point that I was like, oh, this is how far Dean's been pushed.
Well, but Chuck says in the same scene that he's manipulating Dean to make him angry.
That's true.
He straight up tells Amara that he's like, this is my plan, this is my ending. And like, oh, angry Dean, what's he gonna do? Like, he's got this whole monologue where he's just talking about basically how he's been manipulating everything. And then as soon as like Sam like breaks Dean out of it, like Dean's completely different. And then I think in the next episode, the beginning of Despair, Dean talks to Sam about putting the gun on him, and he was like, I couldn't stop myself, and I don't know why. And it's like, well, you're being controlled by Chuck.
I always read Chuck's manipulation as like slightly different. I always think that he's like leading them to a point. Like, I don't know if Chuck can like fundamentally alter like the core of their being kind of thing. Otherwise, I don't feel like Cass could have broken out if he could change who they were like fundamentally as people. But then I guess it doesn't really make sense with the alternate universe things. So.
And Monster at the end of this book, like, he literally writes their actions.
Yeah.
We see that until Cass breaks them out of it, but like Dean tries to, eat a veggie burger, and he can't, and like everything happens like beat for beat as Chuck writes it until Cass breaks them out of it. So he does control their actions. I think a lot of the time.
Sorry, I'm just like theorizing here. Like, I wonder how much he does it all the time. Like how much of their actions he controls at what point. Or do you think part of the fun for Chuck is to see which direction he can manipulate them into until they don't go the direction that he wants, and then he has to kind of forcibly do it? Like The Sims, right? You can turn on and off their free will.
Chuck says that this, out of all the Sam and Deans he's ever created, these two are his favorite.
Yeah.
And what's different about this Sam and Dean over anything else? Well, Chuck also says that out of all of the Castiels in all the universes, this Cass is the only one that didn't follow orders, that didn't rebel. So now the only information we have about what makes this particular universe different than all the others is that the Cass has been rebelling since the beginning. So is the reason that this is his favorite universe is because it's unpredictable to him? Is it because this is the only universe where he doesn't know what's going to happen? Because Cass is undoing his narrative? Like, is the reason Sam and Dean are his favorite, is it because of Cass?
I mean, Cass is the wild card, right? So he does push the narrative in certain directions at times, and definitely changes both of them in their, the way they interact with people and their personalities and all sorts of things. I think you're right. I like that. I do like that.
That's why he keeps bringing Cass back, is because the narrative becomes predictable without him. I think that's the only thing that's like interesting to Chuck after all this time is that he's finally found a story that he doesn't know what's going to happen. And that's because of Cass.
And isn't it funny that when Cass is gone, they revert back to same old patterns that maybe were very predictable? I like that. Danny, you're a good egg.
I think a lot about the Chuck stuff and the free will stuff. It's like most of what I think about.
It does really mess with your rewatch of Supernatural. I definitely think that. It definitely colours it in a different way than it did first time.
It fits.
It does. But I mean, they introduced Chuck fairly early, I feel. So like, obviously not now. They never would have known that they were going to introduce Chuck as a character now, I don't think. Maybe though.
But they also introduced him in a different way. Like, he starts off as a prophet who is just getting visions of what's happening, and then eventually he's actually God that's writing what's happening.
Yeah. Like, Rob Benedict sees those as two distinct characters as well. He thinks that Chuck was basically possessed by God, and that Chuck was a prophet to start with, and then was possessed by God. But I don't know if I buy that theory.
I don't like that theory. I think it really makes sense, personally.
No. I love the Chuck talk. The Chuck talk's great. And I think it fits in nicely into this episode because it is about like the choices that Dean's made and the choice that Sam has made and letting each other go and all that kind of stuff. And
it's about them being literally in a narrative.
Of course, yeah. Yeah. I forgot about that for a second.
A narrative with weird plot holes, and which is very fitting.
It's kind of a perfect analogy for the show, right? Look, you've added depth to this episode that I was maybe like slightly aware of, but didn't know it could fully be plundered in this way. So I really appreciate.
I said that's me, known plunderer of episodes.
Okay, I think we should probably wrap it up there then, unless you have anything else to say on this episode.
I thought it was very creepy. The little girl was very creepy because I swear I had that dress as a kid. I was like, oh no.
Is this me?
Yeah.
I think that's like the white with the red. It's quite. I definitely had a bridesmaid's dress that I wore. I was like 4 or 5 in those colours, and it is kind of very creepy child. What's the word? Fashion. Like if you're gonna dress your kid up as a ghost kid for Halloween, right? That's the dress you would choose.
Yes, you should. Everyone should dress. I love that idea of dressing up your kid as a ghost kid.
Dress up your children like the 2 children from Mary Poppins.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're ghost children. Got it.
And then you
Perfect.
can go with Mary Poppins or Bert.
Ah, that'd be so awesome. You could. But great Halloween costume ideas. Zombie Mary Poppins with your 2 ghost children.
Zombie Mary Poppins is horrific. It's ruining my childhood.
So sorry.
You mean to tell me that Return of Mary Poppins didn't do that for you?
I didn't see it, so no.
Yeah, neither have I. Neither have I.
haven't either.
Which, okay, I should say, I haven't seen the last 2 episodes of Supernatural. I know a lot about them, but I haven't watched them.
What? Okay, this is a development.
So I have a policy of some basic level of self-care, and when I heard about what these are in these episodes, I was like, well, that doesn't seem like a smart thing to do for my mental health. So
fair.
But
I can't argue with that.
I know a lot about them, though.
If you ever want to watch them and you want some moral support, we'd be happy to watch them with you. I would. Yeah. I never want to watch 1520 again, but if you need us to be there, I would do that for you.
I don't consider 1520 to be canon. So what does it matter?
Exactly. The show's already ended for you. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
Exactly. And everyone's gets very upset about the finale, and I'm like, well, I could watch that and be upset as well, or I could rewatch Lily Sunder Has Some Regrets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just...
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought the ending was really good. Like, that really open, the open ending of, like, Dean in that dungeon was just a really great way to end the series. Like, it really left it, I don't want to say open to interpretation. Oh, no.
It really left it open to fanfic.
Yeah, open to fanfic is a better way.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Absolutely.
Oh, Danny, it's been a joy and a pleasure to have you on the episode.
Yes.
Thank you
really.
for having me on.
If you want to come back, we'll definitely have you back.
I think I'll definitely want to come back.
Awesome. So, Annabelle, what episode have we got coming up next?
All right, so next week we're going to be talking about Red Sky at Morning. Our favourite, Bella, is back.
I love Bella. Lauren Cohen has my heart. Yes.
And I think this is the episode that we see Dean in a tux, which I'm also excited about.
Yeah, it
is.
This is the ghost ship.
Yeah, I was recording the audio from this, and because I do have to do that for the cuts, and I was just watching it with no sound on my screen, like as I walked in and out of the room, and every time I walked in, it was the same shot of like Sam dancing with an old lady. So
let's look forward to.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, thanks again to our friend the Pixel Gore on Tumblr for designing our logo art. I recently bought some stickers from Redbubble, which I posted on Tumblr, and they look pretty good. They're going on my sewing machine. Feel free to check out their art and commission them for something really awesome. They also recently did some art for some Dean Cass Big Bang fic that is just like, oh, beautiful, nice, lovely. If you'd like to get in contact with us, we're available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the social media. I'm not listing them all. And we also post questions on Anchor, which I love to see your responses to, and I will pin my favourite ones. So please respond to any questions that we ask. Thank you. If you enjoyed Danny on this episode, which if you didn't, you're a monster. You can follow Danny on at I Have Doubts on Tumblr, and I will also link Danny's blog in the description of this episode. So please go and follow.
Thanks for having me on. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you. We had a lot of fun with you, so thank you so much. I love having guests on here, and yeah, you've been super, super fun.
I was going to say, and hearing like different perspectives on like, and different theories, and like other people who've been thinking about this show way too much all the time. It's nice to have other people.
Realistically, I shouldn't be on this podcast at all because I don't actually want to leave Supernatural Purgatory. I'm having an absolute blast here.
Well, if this keeps on going, we're here for at least another 5 years, so you got time to work through this.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, as we made our journey through Purgatory this week, we found a book. We read the book. It had consequences, but luckily we had a friend with us. So join us next week and hopefully we can escape Supernatural Purgatory.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.